Isaiah 42:16. I want to preach from this subject this morning, directions to a better life. Directions to a better life. Isaiah 42:16. And I will bring the blind by a way that they knew not. I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I will make darkness light before them, and crooked things straight. These things will I do unto them, and not forsake them. Also want to look at John, the 14th chapter, and the 6th verse. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Directions to a better life. Have you ever asked anyone for directions before? You were traveling and you got lost, and most of the men won't admit it, but somebody in here has been traveling somewhere and you got lost and you stopped on the street corner at the gas station somewhere and you asked somebody for directions. Were you able to understand them clearly? And when you followed them, did they get you to where you wanted to go? Because what I found out, and maybe it's not your experience, is often those who are new to an area are dependent upon others for direction. And many times we have stopped on street corners, asked for directions, only sometime to hear the response, well, I'm new here myself. Amen. And sometimes we're surprised when we learn that some people who have lived in a place for a long time still don't even know the directions to some of the city's best known landmarks or civic attractions. And we're surprised sometimes we ask, how could you live in a city and not know how to get there? And as frustrating as it is to find people who give us dumb looks and raise shoulders when we ask directions, it's equally frustrating when we receive directions, but they're so complicated that they're hard to follow. Amen. You know, what we ask is a simple question, but too often we get complications rather than a simple answer. Just consider for a moment the weary traveler who sought directions to a certain address by stopping a pedestrian on the street. And considering the address, the pedestrian said, well, that's on the other side of town. And when asked how to get there, the pedestrian rattled off an array of alternatives. You know, they said, well, when I leave home, I take the interstate and then the 5th Street exit. And then he scratched his head and said, however, when I leave work, I can get there by taking the bypass road and come to straight down the lane. And before the traveler could say anything else, he gave another alternative. He said, but when I leave my mama house, I take the freeway and it's a straight shot, just one turn. And so the traveler interrupted and said, but how do I get there from here? And the pedestrian scratched his head and said, from here, I'm sorry, I don't have the slightest idea. And there are many today who give life directions from their own perspective, from their own vantage point. But the best directions usually come from people who are familiar with where you are and know where you want to go. And there are many who are trying to find the way to a better life, and they're reading life's street signs but have no idea which way to go. Many have decided to simply drive through life hoping they will stumble upon a better life. And some of us have asked directions from those who have steered us in circles and left us confused. And some have stopped looking altogether, and some have just resigned to stay in a substandard condition and to accept bargain basement living as their lot in life instead of finding their way to the abundant life that God promised. For Jesus did say, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. And as Christians, we should rejoice that we have found the direction to an abundant life. For Jesus has shown us the way, and with him as our guide, we know exactly how to get there from here. Or we should know how to get there from here. That's why we follow him and take no chance of getting lost. And so the text before us focuses on Isaiah's prediction that God would show those who are lost a new way of life as their God. He spent the bulk of his life trying to give directions to the nation of Judah. Judah, on the other hand, spent most of its national life taking directions from sources that were foreign to God. Isn't that just like some of us? Amen. Isn't that just like some of our children? Amen. You try to give them direction as their parents or somebody who loves and cares for them, but they want to take direction from other folk who really don't have their best interests at heart. Isn't it strange sometimes how we are unwilling to take direction from folk that we should take direction from, but so willing to follow directions from others that don't have our best interests at heart? I know, young people, we are old and we're fogey, amen, and, you know, old-fashioned, and we don't know what's going on, and we just not cool and hip, and we don't know what's happening, and we don't know how hard y'all got it right now. You know, it's a hard knock life for y'all. I understand what you're going through, amen, and we just don't, it ain't the same as when y'all were children, but the old folk used to tell me, going there, can't tell been there how to get there. Amen. And sometimes we've made some mistakes that you don't have to repeat just because you want to be hard-headed and not listen. And so we find Judah hard-headed, not willing to listen to the prophets of God, but willing to listen to the nations that were around them that did not have a relationship with God. And so as the armies of Babylon approached Judah, there were many that directed its leadership to forge alliances with neighboring nations such as Egypt. It was thought that such alliances with mighty nations would prevent Judah from being defeated and prevent them from being subjugated by an invading power. However, Judah, like Israel, took directions from other sources, and the nation was defeated. And the people became wards of Babylon because they would rather listen to other folk rather than to listen to the man of God. And God's judgment upon the nation for taking wrong directions is the subject of the first 39 chapters of the book of Isaiah. How many of us are willing to testify that many of the early chapters of our lives were shaped and fashioned because we took direction from folk who were not in touch with God? Well, child, my girlfriend said. I wish I had a witness in the building right now. You know, when her and her husband went through it, this what she did, and he straightened right up. Well, you ain't married to her husband, and you might not get the same reaction out of yours that she got out of hers. Come on, somebody. Amen, amen. You know, when Shafika's boy was going through it, this is what she did, amen. And we've spent the early chapters of our lives taking directions from other folk and not taking directions from God. But chapters 40 through 66 in the book of Isaiah focus on how God would deliver the people and ultimately show them the way out of their estranged and exiled condition. Isaiah prophesied about the day when God would restore the believers. And in the 42nd chapter where we find our text, Isaiah's words address both Judah's state of affairs and that of believers in the future. So through his words, though his words are rather immediately addressed to the lost house of Judah, struggling to find its way back to the grace of God, they are also addressed to people in future generations. They are addressed to folk like us.